All right, it is time once again for that moment that we've all been waiting for to talk about a little bit of boxing with our friend, my friend, your friend, everybody's friend, Steve Swift. Holy moly, Steve, it's not been a very busy week of boxing, but we did get to see a cruiserweight just I don't know whether it's more to say anything about the fight itself or the declaration that referees need to sometimes do a little bit better job. I mean, you saw the fight, I saw the fight, everybody saw the fight. Jai Opetaia just comes out and proves himself to be what he was, took some big shots, got himself into a firefight. What did you think of that fight, my friend?
Well, I mean, it plays into his strengths, doesn't it? When when the opponent says, "I'm just going to come out," you think you're a big puncher. Well, just look at me, and yeah, very quickly you get this, and very quickly you get this, and that was actually joking apart a terrible knockdown. That was a very strong, horrible knockdown. And when you see it, I think this might be what you're alluding to. When you see it in slow motion, you think we could have had that stepped in probably 5 seconds before. We don't want that, do we? But then punches were being thrown, and I suppose it was, Opetaia's fast. More of this in a little while, but Opetaia is fast. So, for a man of his size, it's deceptive. He's deceptively fast. But we don't want to see those kind of hard, horrible knockdowns, really.
What I thought as I watched it at 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, got up bright and early, watched this thing. Side note, don't tell anybody. I watched it in my vehicle while driving to work. But anyways, that's another story. What I thought was there could have been an argument for that fight to have bbeen stopped after that first knockdown.
Yeah.
And most certainly I said it as it happened. As soon as Opetaia's opponent hooked that top rope after that shot, before that big left came in, you could have very easily, when he was up against those ropes, he was taking too much. But I mean, listen, we're not here. Nor there. We were just, watching it, not in the ring at the moment. The referee has got one hell of a hard job. But the fact that, Helik didn't get up for, a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
It was not good. And Opetaia then afterwards, good old Eddie Hearn decides to open up his yap. And what did he say, Steve? Did I hear it right? What did he say?
The thing is, I don't think I've heard what he said because I just saw the fight. So, whatever Eddie Hearn generally says, I generally support. But now you're going to say that everybody should be taxed at 90%. He said that, and I'm going to say, oh, well, I don't believe that. What did he say?
Here's what he said. He said that he can see within the next 12 to 18 months, okay? Let's do the math here as I say this. From the next 12 to 18 months, that Opetaia will be fighting Alexander Usyk to solidify who is the greatest cruiserweight of all time. And I said to myself a couple of things. The math simply doesn't math up on this one. It doesn't work out because he still has to unify all of the cruiserweight titles itself. And you've got one, the WBC, that is still kind of like floating around in limbo. They just brought back Badu Jack. He still has to fight the mandatory, which is Ryan Rozicki. And then you've got to try to schedule something with the winner of that after that. You've also got the Chris Billum-Smith situation that's going on over there. So none of these belts have been unified as of yet. this is a very big ask, but I understand the promoter's point of view. He's got to go out there and say flamboyant, inflammatory, crazy things because that's his freaking job, right?
Yeah, this is what he does. And as well as that, there are some who would say, well, you're looking around the Matchroom stable at bigger guys, and he's going, well, hang on, who have I got? Well, there's you, and there's you, and right, let's concentrate on you. So this is the issue, isn't it? Now, Eddie Hearn always does this roll up, roll up. He's if I call him a flim flam merchant, what I mean is that he's a mountebank. He's a mountebank. If he sold me a scalp restorative treatment, I would probably buy it. Those blue eyes flashing and all of that and the chat, I'd probably, and his perfect teeth, I would probably buy it because it's something that he expects. People expect him to do. So, the thing about, AJ and was it AJ and Dubois need to fight next and all of that, you kind of expect him to do it. It's a grain of salt. Well, it's not just a grain, it's a salt cellar of salt. Take it with that.
Right. Absolutely. Now, listen, would I love to see that fight? Absolutely, I would. One thing you have to remember, though, is the two of them met each other just very recently because they just had the Ring Magazine Awards or whatever, right? And there's a picture floating around of Opetaia and Usyk standing next to one another. And here's the one thing: when that fight, if it were to ever, not that it would, because I think that the other part of it is I think Usyk will end up aging himself out of a fight like that before it actually happens. Because you're looking not at 12 to 18 months, you're looking at 24 months at least. 2 years from now, come on, that's just not going to happen. But one thing that if in a perfect world you can play this on, your favorite boxing game for whatever console you have, Usyk much bigger than Opetaia. Opetaia always has the advantage of being the bigger guy in the situation because he's a huge cruiserweight. But you don't realize how like big of a dude Alexander Usyk really is, and then take into consideration how small he looks standing next to a guy like Tyson Fury. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, but the thing is, with Opetaia, if that ever happened, and I agree with you, I don't think it ever would, but he's bigger and probably faster. I think that's not good for Jai. Jai, go and see Eddie and say, listen, Eddie, return my call. I don't like that thing you did. I think I'd rather fight, as I said last week, Johnny falls down easily. Billy Journeyman, I'll fight him rather than fighting Alexander Usyk. No.
Yeah, exactly. Usyk is going to go out on top as one of the greatest heavyweights and greatest boxers of all time. Period. And I can understand why people want anybody around that gravitational area wants to get that because it puts limelight on yourself, right? Now, speaking of limelight on yourself, it would appear, I got a question for you. And because we're talking about Eddie Hearn, we're talking about Matchroom, and we mentioned the things and all of the different promoters out there. And there's one promoter, and I'm going to say this with air quotes for those of you watching, promoter, because he's not really a promoter. He doesn't promote, he doesn't have a Matchroom or a Golden Boy or whatever it is, but he's putting on the greatest fights in the world. And we're talking about the Sheik, right? Turki Al Sheik is putting on his excellence, his majesty, whatever he wants to be called, he can be called, because at the end of the day, he is the money man behind all of this. He has more power, it seems like, than some of the promoters. And one of the things that he wants to do is start a league. What have you heard about this thing now, Steve?
Well, we've heard it before, haven't we? First of all, let me just say that, he is the money man, and we see him sitting front and center. He never looks happy to be at the boxing, in my view. Never looks happy. He's like Donald Trump, at WrestleMania 4, was it? When it was at his facility, so he had to sit there, but he didn't quite enjoy it really. You could tell that, and I feel the same way about the Sheik. Really, I don't know whether he enjoys boxing. I don't know whether this is just boxing's a good deal. It could be, but this league is again, we've had it before, and it's not going away, is it? It's not going away. And as we said last week or the week before, the time is just so elastic. It's melding into each other. But as we said, we've got so many alphabets, and sometimes those alphabets stop people from having the matches that we want to see. And so there is something that could say, if we could get rid of all that, if we could do all that, get rid of all that, and you can have the fights that you want. How would you feel about that? Probably fans would say, well, I would say, what about the legitimacy of that? But then people would say, out of the way, old man. No, a league. That sounds interesting. So I think, I don't know whether he's going to at some point say, okay, I'll put my hand in my pocket here, and I have done for a long time, but we need to start talking about this league. Otherwise, I'm out. He could. He's got an awful lot of play.
I wonder if there's actually legs to it in the fact that, like, when you think about putting together a league and the logistics that it takes to do that, you talk about NFL, NHL, even soccer, even the football leagues like, La Liga and stuff, like all of those, like, it takes so much to be able to do that. And is there enough meat out there in the world of boxing? Because what he's doing is he's putting on the biggest fights. What he's doing, I think that there's somebody, if not him himself, who's literally sitting on message boards going, on Reddit and wherever else, and saying, what do the fans want to see? Cool, I'm going to give him that. He's come in this way as like this super medium in between all of them, who's able to work with all of them. Because as well as I do, trying to get promoters to work together is like trying to pull teeth. It's unbelievably, difficult and ridiculous to do sometimes. But for some reason, the money always seems to talk. And this guy has an unlimited source of money, it seems like, right? Eventually, like you say, though, he's going to want some return on his investment, I would think. Right?
Yeah, and it's very interesting, your point here, because I don't know, but I would suspect that the Sheik hasn't got a subscription to Ring Magazine. I suspect he's not thinking, but the legitimacy of all this, it's the sweet science. He's coming from ostensibly nowhere really into boxing. No one's saying Buddy used to box when he was a kid, or and he grew up with he was a real Thomas Hearns fan, I don't think. But that adds a kind of refreshment to this, because he doesn't see that legitimacy. So he doesn't see, but we need to have this, but we need to have the belt, but we need to have the purses, and we need to. Well, no, forget about all that. I'm looking at it from a different point of view entirely. I'm not looking at it as a sweet science. I'm looking at it as, show me this, bright lights. That's interesting, but also worrying for someone like me who's so curmudgeonly and elderly.
Well, one of the things you have to remember is the reason he doesn't need a subscription to Ring Magazine, Steve. He fucking owns it. The Saudi government is the owners of Ring Magazine now. They just bought it up. So this leads into what I was saying, where he's kind of like, he's listening to the journalists that make up the stories, because the journalists that are making up the stories are the people that are listening to the fans. The fans want to see this, so it's a story that we want to get read. So I can completely understand that. And one of the fights that we've been talking about here is Canelo and Bud Crawford. Is this thing closer to happening now because of a guy like, His Excellency getting involved?
Well, I mean, it is, but I suspect it isn't as well. I'm hedging my bets. I'm sitting on the fence so much I've got splinters in my capacious ass. And the thing is that I think that he, yes, comes at it from a different point of view. Never mind all this. Let's just have the fight. Never mind all this kind of, you're brilliant and I was brilliant. Let's just have the fight. Mano a mano. Let's do it. Bright lights. I still don't think that will happen, because I think that Canelo needs to take more care of his career as it comes to its final days.
Well, it's one of those fights that is definitely compelling. And another thing that we wanted to talk about before we go here, and I wanted to get, we sat down and we said, you know what? It's the beginning of the year. It's 2025. The Sheik wants to put together a league. We're putting together fights with Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford. there's got to be other stuff out there. And you get into the realm of like fantasy booking. And I said to you, I said, hey, let's do like a top, like, 3 or 4 each. And we put it out there. And we even got some messages from fans sent in something. Are you ready for this one here? Right. Mike D from Brantford, Ontario, Canada says these are some fights he would like to see in 2025. I don't see any of these things happening, but it's crazy to think about this. Think about this. Francis Ngannou versus Andy Ruiz. I mean, that would be the slowest heavyweight fight I think we've ever seen in our entire life. And I don't know. I mean, I don't think, I got to be honest with you, I got as bad as Ruiz looked in this last one, I still would take him in this fight because I don't think Ngannou is proven himself in the world of boxing at all. What do we got here? Amanda Nunes and Katie Taylor. Okay, again, another crossover between, MMA and boxing. I don't like Amanda Nunes's chance in this one whatsoever because if we're talking about boxing fights, I never take the MMA person. It seems to be a silly thing to do. And finally, Mike D from Brantford, Ontario suggests Paul versus Paul. I can only assume that this is Jake versus Logan. And, listen, that is something that we would all like to see just because I'm sure it's happened in the living rooms while they were growing up. But yeah, let's watch it. Let's watch the two dopehead brothers steal everybody's money yet again and have that fight. That you know what? Great suggestions, Mike D and Brantford. Listen, for all of the rest of you, send in your suggestions. Leave them in the comment area. Now, I want to get yours, Steve, because I feel like you have an eye for the crazy in this one. So let's see what you got. What did you have for your matches, my man?
Well, I mean, I started, I'm looking at them just in case I forget. I started, by the way, I did like your two dopehead brothers. That could be, that's really good on the poster. Two dopehead brothers, get it on.
Right?
Put the bong. Anyway, I had Mr. Opataya. I've seen yours as well, you see, and versus Moses Italma, because these are, I mean, I just want the fireworks here, and they're both big hitters. They can both really do that, and that would be extraordinary. It would be. Who's gonna get the first shot in there? That's gonna be a doozy. So yes, I'd like that. I'd like to see that one very much. I'd love to see Benavidez versus Bivol. I really would. I looked online and thought, is this any closer? Is this at all close? And people were saying, oh, this will happen in summer. It won't. It won't. We've got a match in February. How much of Bivol is going to be left after that? Yeah. But Benavidez is such a big dude, and Bivol, who was so, at a higher weight, admittedly, so prescient against Canelo. Since then, he's not fought. He's not been that busy, and people are saying, well, I don't know. I'm not quite sure. We will see what happens with the Beterbiev or Beterbiev fight. I mean, for me, they could scrape him off the canvas and put him in against Benavidez, and I'll be watching that.
Yeah.
Then I thought the Ben Whittaker and Liam Cameron fight has got to happen, because this is, if you'll remember rightly, the one where the Nassim Hamed, because we always say that in this country, like Nassim Hamed. Oh yeah, because he does a bit of this. Yeah. He's got that cocky attitude, and then he was found out by Cameron, and it was the one where they ended where they both went over the top rope, and Whittaker did his leg in. I know I'm laughing, but it did look comic. And there's a big thing for both of these, because Liam Cameron has reignited his career, and Queensbury, Frank Warren, has signed him up, and Whittaker has also said, look, I need that fight. Now it looks like it might not happen for reasons. Maybe the mat's the wrong colour, maybe it's the wrong day of the week, but it looks like it might not happen. That fight has to happen, because if it doesn't, it will always be, well, Cameron's going to be, he needs the impetus of that Ben Whittaker situation, the Ben Whittaker Farrago. Sounds like some kind of Hollywood movie. Probably with, I don't know, with George Clooney or something like that. The Ben Whittaker Farrago. Anyway, that'll always be there. So he needs to use that. And Ben Whittaker, if he doesn't face Cameron and beat him handily, that people will never forget it. Like me, I'll always be saying, "Come on, there's that, isn't there?" And then I went off beam a little. Would you like me to go on with the slightly off beam ones?
You have this glint. You have this glint in your eye, like you're about to say the most outrageous, crazy thing I could possibly imagine. Go ahead, Steve Swift.
Well, there are two fights. The first one is Devin Haney, but really Ryan Garcia. He needs to fight Devin Haney. We know that, but not just Devin Haney. I think in this era of tag team boxing, I think it should be Devin Haney and representatives from VADA, so that because he's in the year-long testing thing now. So really, he should be able to tag them in to box, and Ryan Garcia should be able to beat them all, and then say, "I beat the doping ban as well. I put you down." So all of that. So I think that tag team boxing would really work.
Okay. All right.
And my final one is Jake Paul. He needs a really big opponent. And for me, the biggest opponent, greatest boxer in the world. Nobody's a better boxer than me. Nobody's a better boxer. Nobody's a better boxer. I'm going to beat him. And the winner gets to be president. So I think that if you went into the ring with Trump and the winner is the president, let's face it, Donald Trump isn't a senator. So anybody can be president now, can't they? So it seems. So getting a little political, I think that would be the pay-per-view to beat all pay-per-views. And, I'd love to see him doing his Rocky stuff with all of that, with all his swept hair and all that.
We laugh and we joke, but I mean, given what his last fight was, we're not out of the age category for a Jake Paul fight. There's no doubt about it. You know what I mean? Just be careful. Be careful what you say, Steve Swift, because you also are in that age category, and Jake Paul could come knocking at your door.
If Jake Paul comes knocking at my door, I will enjoy that very, very much indeed. You're going to get so many Rocky 3 montages that you can use.
Amazing. All right. Well, very quickly, I want to go over these before we run out of time here. These are the ones that I picked. If we're going to go right out the gate, they're not as crazy and wild as yours, as much as I would love to see those ones that you picked. Oh my God, that would be absolutely amazing. Let's think about this one for a second. The real world of boxing. Naoya Inoue against Jesse Bam Rodriguez. I think that is a fight that everybody would love to see. The speed. Listen, don't blink. Do not blink when that fight happens, because it's going to be way too much. We're talking thousands upon thousands of punches being thrown in the first round alone. Unbelievable that fight would be. Another fight, you mentioned him earlier, both of them actually in different fights, but let me throw this one at you, because we're talking about the young 19-year-old, phenom into boxes, Moises Ituama, right? Against Daniel Dubois. I think Daniel Dubois, right? If we're talking heavyweights, I mean, I think that's a fight that would be very, very nice to see. Absolutely. And it also could lead credence to the fact that Moses would then have a shot at a belt at such a young age and be able to maybe break Mike Tyson's record. Who knows? What about this one? Virgil Ortiz Jr., Sebastian Fundora. Everybody loves the Virgil Ortiz Jr. fight, but Fundora being like 19 feet tall this is the question. This is the quiz. Would Ortiz Jr. be able to get in close enough to stay outside of that jab that Fundora has? I mean, I think that's an exciting fight to see as well. And finally, of course, anytime, anywhere, any day of the month, I would love to see Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano 3 happen again, because if the first two fights have taught us anything, women can box, and these two women box very, very well. Listen, those are just the ones that I would like to see. I would love to hear what y'all would like to see as well. Steve, what do you think? Do you think any of those fights have a snowball chance in hell of happening in 2025 or what?
I think Moses and Daniel Dubois, yeah, particularly if the door to Usyk closes. I personally think that fight should happen, but I think Usyk might retire. I think he might. I don't think he's going to get up for another. I really don't. Why would he? So, if that closes, then that would be something that would allow Dubois to say, look, I'm bringing young talent on. And that would be something. That's the one that I think has the most opportunity. But all of those young sir, that's fabulous. None of them have got President Trump in them, which is obviously the flaw, but but that's just great. A very good list. Well done.
Well, let's get that list over to His Excellency and see what he can put together for us, because he seems to be the man in boxing. I'd like to hear, and I know that Steve would like to hear from all of you and find out what you guys think should be some fights that can happen. As always, please, become a member, subscribe to this channel, send us a chat, leave us a comment, click that like button, do all of those things. Not just here where we always ask the question, what's the work, but please follow Steve Swift. And where can you follow those lovely, lovely eyeballs of yours, Steve?
Oh, thank you. They are lovely eyeballs. You can follow my balls at Steve Swift 088 at YouTube. At TikTok. I'll be Will Weary Guy 1 at YouTube, and Will Weary Guy everywhere blooming well else.
Perfect. All right. You heard him, ladies and gentlemen. So go right over there, do that whole thing. We are going to take a very, very quick one. We'll be right back. For those of you that are watching this on YouTube, you're not going to see any kind of commercial. This whole thing's just going to end. We'll be back in a minute.
Subscribe now for more content and combat sports discussions. This is the law. This is the law.